everything that's going to be good at your company, like a house, is based on the foundation. And the foundation are these standard operating procedures, which allows you to create training curriculum and make things go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Contractor Success Academy lesson. Today, we're here with Al. Al, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
Al, we've had the opportunity to have you on our summit back in 2018. You delivered some awesome content, so it was only fitting to have you back. I know that a lot of contractors struggle with process and operations, and so when the term SOP is thrown out there, if you don't know what an SOP is, this is a session that you need to absolutely listen to. Al, let's screen share and jump right into it.
Okay. Well, the main thing, first off, I want to be clear is he said SOP and not SOB because coming from New York, they have two different meanings. I want to be clear about that. And even in seminar, by the way, I always go into that. I am an SOB, but not the one you're thinking about. I was a son of a boss. And so I was third generation. And that's kind of where I started this stuff. So I have been in your chair, all of you out there. I know what it's like. And I can tell you, frankly, it's really uncomfortable. And it was very uncomfortable for me for many, many years until we learned to take control. And the part that I really like to share is that I've gotten to be known as the operating guy, the manuals, procedures, systems, staffing things, all the other stuff. What I really was a sales guy and a marketing guy. The problem was my company kept on blowing up my sales. So I had to pull myself off the road and get really good at getting the stuff done and stop blowing up my sales. And that is where standard operating procedures come from. And what it really helped me do, because I was really lucky. I was making good money. I mean, it really was. I was young and making money. That's pretty sweet. The problem was that I was on a path to kill myself. And that's not really good. So I had to learn how to get these kinds of things. So I read a really powerful book for us back in the 90s, a book called by Michael Gerber, and it was called The E-Myth. And he talked about that if you're always working in the business and never on the business, nothing's going to change. And that was such a powerful statement for me. Now, I worked in the business, literally in the field, till the last day I was there with my brothers. And the company, I'm happy to say, 20 years later, is still doing great. And my nephew is now fourth generation. And you can't do that without systems. But it taught me that you needed to create and document. So it gave me the why and it gave me the what, but not a bit of help for the how. And so I had tried for a long time to write operating manual procedures, and they came out like a law book, Article 1-point-347. I'm saying, no good. Yeah. And then, I was a New York City union shop, so I've traveled the whole country and Canada. And people always say, well, that may not work here, which makes me laugh hysterically because I was a New York City union shop and my shop took it in as what they need to do. So trust me, it can be done. And there's actually a benefit, which I'll get into it. But we had created this big employer-employee manual. I went to court thinking, okay, I'm good. And what I found out is, because the judge said, would the common person understand that? And the answer is no, because it wasn't written in plain English. And what also came up was that it was too big and we weren't documenting we were doing it in meetings, so they wouldn't know. It was a very painful lesson, but the best lesson I could get at age 25. Because the next time around, I realized I could not write manuals myself. So we invested what's today about $150,000 in today's dollars. Back in the 1996, we brought our whole team together and talked about how we affect each other's job. And I'd like to say it was my brilliance, but it was not. It was my industry great friend, Dan Hollihan, who explained to me that the customer service rep and how they answer the call and the dispatcher, how they communicate, maximize the day, and how the tech runs the call, everything they need to know other than the actual work, and then get all the information back to the office. So that's what we call the triangle of communication. And any break in any of those legs are going to cause you a problem. So this is what I want to share with you today. It isn't just standard operating procedures, whether you take mine and edit that, which is easier, or if you even were to create your own. There were things that I didn't know after I had spent all that money. So I want to share some of those things with you today. And that's really what we're after. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Mark.
So I think that's interesting, Al. I mean, you talk about the amount of money that went into producing this. I think there's been a lot of trials and tribulations to be able to get to a point where you're comfortable. You have something that works, and like you said, it's not written like articles that people, just start reading and the brain shuts off because wow, this is too dry, it's too technical. I don't want to read this plain English. It just makes sense. So happy that you're going to share some of this stuff with us today. And how much time do you think kind of went into this?
Oh, I would say you talk about the original.
Yeah.
It took us a minimum of 6 months just to get the first, I'd say about maybe 100 pages.
Yeah.
Just get it to where it was ready to be rolled out.
Wow.
And rollout is one of the key things here. It's not shoved out. And my friend said to me, he goes, I know how you are, Al. You're going to hang out and come out like you have the 10 commandments and that everybody should obey. And that's not going to work. And he was right. It's not a good approach. So you as an owner have to get over yourself. The real key thing here is it's not what you can shove upon people. It's what they embrace and understand that's in their own benefit.
Yeah.
Because
Adoption.
Manuals, yes. Manuals really go for three things. They improve your customers' lives. It makes the company better so that everybody who works there can have a good day. That's really what we're after. So here's what you're going to learn about operating procedures today. The do's and the don'ts. How operating manuals can change your company for the better, and why manuals track back to your org chart. So the do's and the don'ts. After I got done, as I said, spending all that money, I thought, okay, we're set. No, we weren't. Not at all, because until they understand, what they get, what happens, be aware that we are, and looking at this face, you can tell I've been around the block a little bit. The nature of it is I'm still a kid at heart, and I want to know what happens to me if I do, and what happens to me if I don't. And everybody, including yourself and everyone who works at your company, wants to know the same thing. So your obligation as an owner and boss, you need to know and explain to them about what this is. Here's the sad part, Mark, is this picture wasn't in black and white, but it was the only one I could find. So it makes me kind of sad. But this is myself and my dad and my two older brothers.
Now you're aging yourself, Al. Now you're aging yourself here.
I am. I'm afraid so. But yeah. So I wanted to share it with a family. And one day, after reading the book, and I walked in and I said to my dad and my brothers, I said, you know what? Every day I wake up, I feel like all of them can do anything they want, or they could walk out and we'd be stuck. And I just feel like a hostage. And I said, you know what? I bet you do too. To which my dad and my brothers looked at me and go, yeah, what are you going to do about it? Because I was the guy that would, activate and do plans. And so I said, right now, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to come back with a way to be able to get this thing squared away. And that was really my goal. So one of the things to be really aware of is what is a policy versus what's a procedure. And so a policy is what you do, what to do, and a procedure is how to do it. They're two different things. So some things are policies, some things are procedures. One of the things I would share on that is, so a policy would be is you have to have clean hands. Sounds reasonable. Everybody knows what clean hands are. Well, what is clean hands? Is I put myself underwater and go like that? I think my hands are clean. Or is it run the water, get it hot, use a specific hand soap, rub your hands for 30 seconds. That's the procedure. Do you follow the difference between policy and procedure? Because it's really important to understand that.
Yeah.
The other thing was that we didn't do training. We didn't do training at all. We hoped that you were experienced, that you knew what you were doing. We flipped you the keys because we always hired in desperation. My brother had an expression. He called it the mirror test. You fog in the mirror, you're hired. And so a lot of us do that. And I'm not saying it was right, but we learned after a while. But what you really need to get attached to is once you have procedures about how you do what you do for all the positions at your company, then you don't have to hire all these highly skilled people who are problem children bringing into your company. That makes sense? Because that's really the thing that we all do is we hope that we'll find that magic person and we go around chasing lightning everywhere we can to try and catch it in a bottle. I tried for years. It doesn't work. You can get away with it once in a while, but it's a very rare thing to do. So once you have procedures that explain how you do your work, this was kind of the thing. So what I advocate with manuals is that training never stops. And here's why I didn't want to do training. I was out there being a tech. I was like, we were 25 techs in the company. And I came to my dad one day I was age maybe 30, 32. And I said to my dad, being a tech is okay, but is that all there is? My dad was a very quiet person, Mark. And he just looked at me and he smiled and he goes, I was wondering when you were going to ask that, because here's what you need to know. You are never getting out of that truck until you figure out how to put other people in that truck. And that was all that he said to me. But right then and there, I knew that I needed policies and procedures. I needed to create a training curriculum off of those policies and procedures. And then I needed to create a real world training center where they would bring the manual to life. It's not one of these pieces. Everything that's going to be good at your company, like a house, is based on the foundation. And the foundation are these standard operating procedures or the manuals, which allows you to create training curriculum, which allows you to get into the training center and make things go. Because here's what I know for all of you out there. Training can't be viewed as a job interruption because that's what you think. How do I know that? Because that's what I thought. And I understand that's what you feel. It's like, I'm busy. I got to go sell stuff. I got to get a great marketing campaign with Mark. I got to do all these things. I'm not saying no, my friends. But everybody at your company, including the accounts payable person, accounts receivable, person who answers the phone, person who dispatches, the brand new apprentices that you bring in that you want to make into techs. What happens when your company gets big? You're going to need field supervisors. There's a lot of different layers that need to be done. And you cannot get that done until you accept that your job is all about training and taking people and training them. It's your job. There's no shortcut to this. This is what's really key here. So how do you train them today? I call it OTJT, and that means on the job training. So that means you are penalizing your customers as it exists today because you go to their house hoping to train your people while they're in the house or at the business. And so they're paying for your education. And that does not work because you're going to hope and get a chance that you'll correct in the rest of it. Where they should be trained is in your shop. That's where they get trained. Everybody that you've ever interviewed, if you think about an interview, Mark, who has ever said to you, oh, I don't know how to do that? They go, oh, yeah, I've changed a ton of toilets. You kidding? That's something that I've done all the time. Heating and cooling, there isn't a problem out there. I don't know. And even the person that you hire in your bookkeeping cases, QuickBooks, I know inside and out. And that is, of course, until you actually test them to find out what they do and don't know. So that is the problem here as it exists today if you don't have these things without operating manuals. Mm-hmm. So here's my advice to you. Don't keep struggling with these things. There's no reason to do that. So what do I mean by that? Answering the same old questions time and time and time again. I'll give you I do this in workshop all the time. Is those shoe covers that service people put on their feet these days to keep the carpet clean, Mark? That makes sense up there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I walk over to Mark and I say, hey, Mark, yesterday what you told me was, I get it. I have to wear those shoe covers because we want to protect people's floors. Hey, Mark, where do I get my shoe covers? And then Mark gives me the answer. Next day, hey, Mark, I know you're busy. I'm sorry, but I forgot to tell you, I had a fight with my wife before I came into work yesterday. And I know those shoe covers are really important. So, Mark, where do I get the shoe covers? And then Mark tells me where to get the shoe covers. Hey, Mark, I know, really this time I'm not kidding. I'm really paying attention. I didn't tell you that my dog, I had to rush him to the animal hospital last night. Where do I get my shoe covers? So the point of this story is that you keep answering the same question. You want to know where your day goes, my friends? It goes with, got a minute? You allow your staff to come to you because you haven't trained them. They don't know what they need to know so that they can do what they need to do.
Should call that your don't talk to me policy.
Well, if you haven't given them the information, it's really on you, my friend.
Right.
It's you. You haven't trained them. So also this thing about callbacks or repeats, there are a lot of these other things. If you're always like a cat chasing its tail, how do you get to new work? So if Mark can make your phone ring off the hook, that's great. You can't go run that call because you're busy handling the fires you set yesterday. So until you have a procedure about how to minimize callbacks, we're never going to eliminate it. So think of it as a bathtub, and the drain is the callbacks. So your goal is, instead of water flying down that drain, is to slow it down. And by having manuals and training and things of that nature, and having a procedure how to go through when a callback comes up, you can greatly reduce that, so that when Mark makes your phone ring, you can actually take advantage of that new work, which means money and profit. Handling unnecessary complaints from customers. By a show of hands, who loves doing that? Nobody loves doing it. So here's the thing. When I was young, it was a case of, the adage used to be, if you love something, you would tell 20 of your neighbors. And if you hated something, you'd go tell 100 neighbors. Well, today I just go online or on my mobile phone, and I'm going to tell 7 billion people on this earth how miserable you just made my life. So if they don't have a process, yes, Yelp. If you don't have a process to minimize that, and if actually part of the process, the manual should be that there's a way to exit a call the right way, because if there's an issue, you better stop what you're doing and go fix the issue right now. I hate to tell you how many times I've been out with techs and ride-alongs watching them. They knew they blew up the call, but they didn't stop what they're doing to go make it right with the customer. And usually it's because they didn't follow a process or a system. They skipped around, they jump around. For those of you who do heating, imagine that one time you start at the thermometer, the thermostat. The next time you start out at the radiator or the air vent. You're going to miss stuff. If you're somebody in the office and you're not following the customer service rep, where you jump to the, asking for information, you haven't built a rapport. These are all bad things. These are stuff that sows the seeds of
totally avoidable. Yeah.
Totally avoidable. Yep.
Yeah.
With training. So what I call parking lot meetings is, I used to have a meeting with my techs, and I would go through about, whatever policy and procedure things that we had to discuss and ask for questions. And nobody ever had a question in that meeting. But then they would go right outside into the parking lot, right in front of the one window I had in my building, and they would have their own meeting because they were afraid to ask. They didn't know what the information. Nobody wants to expose what they don't know. So one of the things you need to do, and one of the things that we had to adopt, which was not easy because we had a New York City attitude. We loved finding out what you don't know, Mark, and then just laughing about it. But here's the problem is, once you do that to people at your company, they're never going to show you the holes. And trust me, everyone has holes. I had holes. I was the second best tech out of 25 techs in the shop. I'll help you with the mystery. My brother Richie was number one, and he's still probably number one today. But there were things that I would talk customers out of doing because I wasn't sure about the process. Now that's the boss's kid. Let that wash over you for a minute and think about what I'm saying here, because that's really a big problem. So once we had manuals and once we had training curriculum, once we had training systems, we said, whatever you don't know, Mark, is now my problem. I'm going to show you how to do it. You're going to demonstrate it. And after that, in the field, if you're not doing it, well, that's not a training issue anymore. That becomes a compliance issue. Much easier to do. And we were just like everybody else. This problem about finding techs and, people in
right.
Most economies are really hot these days. This isn't the first cycle I've seen. It was hot in the .com. Guys were being pirated from me. They were getting phone calls night and day. I will tell you that I really didn't lose anybody to anyone because they liked being in our company. They liked knowing how to play the game. They liked having some rules and structure. They liked knowing where they were going to go. But the other key thing here is I stopped looking for fully trained people that got trained wherever they did and brought all their attitude and behaviors along with them. And I looked for good, young, willing people that I could provide the skills. And that widens your pool of candidates tremendously. Here's two other traps that I want to kind of get to in the absence of manuals, because I tried for a long time. If you think you can run your company by talking, it kind of goes like this. Hey, Mark, I told you that's not where the tools go back. And Mark looks at me and goes, oh, yeah, that's where you said. No, Mark, that's not what I said. Oh, yeah, I distinctly remember 6 months ago, you said that's where the tools go. And then we have this inane conversation. Can you hold me accountable to whatever you think you said 6 months ago? So you really cannot run your company by just talking. It doesn't really land. The second mistake is issuing memos. My brother Richie and I we're usually the last tech standing. Even though we had a 7 to 4, 8 to 5, 10 to 7, 2 to 11, 5 to 2 a.m. There were actually people on. These were not on-call shifts. But we were the last tech standing. We'd get back, and Richie would say to me, "Oh, you know what so-and-so did?" And I said, "No." And then he'd say, "Could you write a memo?" And so I would, because I could type and he couldn't. I'd write a memo, pull it off and go, "What do you think?" And he goes, "Pretty good. Can you make it rougher?" I said, "Sure can." So then I would type it in caps because we're not kidding. And he goes, "I like it. What else do you got?" I go, "Here it is in color." And so, yeah, and everybody knew that we were screaming at him, and it really didn't do anything because memos are a one-way communication. So one day I made this horrible mistake. I told them to bring all their memos in. Well, my memos are really important, Mark, because they were crumpled up like that. And I figured they put it under their pillow so that when they were sleeping, the knowledge would just come right into their heads. And also not to mention they were 6 times out of date. The first time they ever questioned anything that I wrote in a memo is I said, "You have to sign here." And then they looked at it and go, What am I signing? Because that was the first time they ever read my memos. Memos are one-way communication. Here's another trap. Don't think you have operating manuals today. What you probably have is an employee handbook, employer-employee. Now, that's a good CYA. And I'm going to say this slowly so I don't trip up here, Mark. Cover your anatomy. And so it's good as a protection. You need to know, like, what do you do for jury duty? And, there are a whole bunch of HR things that need to be covered. But it doesn't help your company run one bit. It doesn't tell how, if I gave you 10 great plumbers today, could you put them to work? Could they go an hour from your shop and do a toilet reset the same way? If you haven't defined it in writing, the answer is there's a 0 chance that that can happen. So I'm not saying employee handbook is not important, but it's maybe 1/10 of all the manuals you need to be able to run your company. It's a fraction of what you need. So how operating manuals can make your company better? They provide the objectivity on how they're judged. My brother Richie, when we were putting the manuals together, we agreed that we would have a procedure, for pretty much everything. And whatever it is, we'd change it later if everybody agreed that there's a better, cheaper, faster way to do it. So we're in the process and get to some subject matter. And he goes, "Well, use your best judgment." And he says it again a little bit later. And I go, "Richie, you don't really mean use their best judgment. You mean like they're mind readers. They can read your mind and they would know what your best judgment is, which is totally unfair." And he laughed because that's exactly what he was looking for. And anytime I tell this to contractors, they also understand how unfair it is. Because what is ever good enough for you if you can't spell it out in words and in pictures or anything other stuff? They're always being judged on subjectivity. The other great thing about manuals, it started to teach us about how to find better way of doing things. We never really decided about what would be the best way to do stuff. And making good on offering a career, not a job. We always had to go out of our own company to draft somebody in because we didn't have a pathway for them to rise up. And that is really unfair. You want to destroy the culture in your company, keep going outside your company and bypassing your people. That will do the trick. It's always a good. So what makes a company better? This is where I was talking, is a great company culture. And the most important thing is buy-in, because buy-in is what you need. And buy-in is about these manuals, which is rules to play by. Now, the trick to this is that they do get to get their fingerprints on these. So when you have the manuals like mine and you edit them, then you go to them and go, "Look, it's not set in stone. Come back and tell me first what you think is wrong and what is it that you hate." And then we agree to play by those rules. And then every week we're reading those manuals. And even after they've been in the culture for a while, every week to keep it in the culture, you read 1 to 2 pages. That's what makes a difference.
I feel like that's super powerful.
Yeah. When I'm traveling around the country, there's usually in my right hand a cup of Starbucks. And what I always say is, I don't think Starbucks is the best cup of coffee. Really. I don't think so. But here's what I do know. It tastes the same in Des Moines, Iowa, as it tastes in Orange County, California, or South Portland, Maine. It's pretty much the same. So what do we want as customers? We want consistency. No matter who shows up, no matter who answers the phone, No matter how the dispatch is, if I have a problem, there is consistency, is what you're always looking. And that is at the beginning, starting with the person who answers the phone, who is what I call the happy hostess in a restaurant, all the way to the tech who comes there and getting the information back. Here's the other part of this. All of the manuals are hung on this structure, which is your organizational chart. Mark, I don't care who is your CIO, CTO, CFO, CEO. I could do it in a song, but the reality is I don't care. It's the boxes it takes to run your company. And the flatter it is, the better it is. But it has levels like apprentice, junior tech, senior tech, field supervisor, branch manager, and so there's an area of growth, but it's the boxes it takes to run your company. Because this picture looks very familiar to you all, my friends, because you're wearing all of these hats. And when you look at my org chart, you're going to get very depressed because you're going, oh, I got all these boxes to fill. Well, you have all of those boxes to fill today. I am delivering to you what you need to know is until you have these boxes, you're never going to contain or control your company. Now, the thing of it is to think of it as a bingo board. And then the goal is to put a manual in place to cover every one of those bingo boards. So we didn't have an org chart at my company. So trust me, I know what I'm talking about here. I would come into the company about 6:30 and 6:35 in the morning, and I was a late guy because my brother Marty actually was in earlier. He didn't know anything about service, but he was the first one on the phone. And about 6:15 in the morning, he gets a call from a customer who's really upset, and he goes across the hall and starts screaming and hollering at our service manager. And by the time I walk in at 6:35, there on the top of the roof is my service manager, just about ready to dive off. Then I'm at the dispatch desk and I'm picking up a phone call, and I get a phone call from a supplier. Now, be aware, my dad raised us on that. We race with our money to the supplier because they're going to take care of us in times that get tough. And by the way, my dad was brilliant because when Hurricane Sandy hit, my brothers were taken care of. They went to the front of the line and making sure that they were covered because we always respected and dealt with these guys. So anyway, I'm on the phone with him. And he goes, "Hey, Al, I know you're busy. Maybe it was an oversight, but can I get a check for whatever it is?" And I hang up the phone and I go running across the office to the accounts payable person. I go, blah, 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 and start yelling at them. And then Marty has to get that accounts payable person off the roof. You with me so far?
Yeah.
So this is how the conversation went. I said, "You know what, Marty? You don't like the way the service is going. You tell me and I will get it fixed." And Marty looks at me, he goes, "You don't like the way the bills are getting paid? You come tell me and I'll get it fixed." And that was the first time we ever put together an org chart about whose job it was. We were spending and wasting all this time, and poor people were being savage. So be aware, I don't care what size company you are, you need to have an organization chart that is built for today and your future. And that's really what you need to have to take control of the thing. Never getting out of those boxes until you have created systems and procedures that others can come along and take those boxes away. So here's the question. Why would your employees care about your org chart? There are 4 reasons. First of all, if you promise them a career, where am I today? So do I show up as an apprentice? I can go up these ladders. Do I show up as an accounts payable person? Do I show up as an installer or a salesperson? Where am I today? Here's the thing. If you're offering a career, where can I go with you tomorrow? Who really is my boss? Now, in my case, there were myself, my 2 older brothers, and my dad. Good luck trying to figure out who you were supposed to please. That happens at your own company. I don't care if you're related or not. Someone in accounts receivable, payable, dispatcher always thinks they're the boss of the techs, and the techs always think they're the boss of the dispatcher. And if you look at my org chart, they're both dead wrong. It's the service manager who's in charge. It's a great relief to know who really is your boss. And here's the last reason. Who can I go to for help? That's such a big thing to know. Who is it safe? So here's your mission. Get these comprehensive operating manuals. I will share that I put this program online. There is this thing that worked out with Mark that you get a discount. It's a great way to do this. It's so much easier to be an editor than creator, but I don't care what you do. You got to have manuals. You have to do the process that I share about how to get the buy-in so that they get their fingerprints on it, but they don't get to hijack it. And that's a tricky skill that I share. consistent policy and procedure. I always talk about this. I hated cutting the grass when I was young. There's only one thing I would have hated more: if my older brothers didn't have to cut the grass. Because if we all have to cut the grass, I'm good with that. And that is true about consistent policy and performance. And then the ability to train on these systems is what allows you to take control today and grow where you want to go. All right, Mark.
Fantastic, Al. It's good. I'm taking a page of notes here as you speak, and I think there's just so many things that are going to be light bulb moments for people. The idea of, implementing manuals, and just the notion of, hey, you can try to create these and go at it, alone, or you can edit, right? So I think the link here that you have here, like you said, Al, we worked out a deal whereby people who sign up and want to give this a try, they can get a discount. So just head over to that link if anyone's interested. But the idea is to create these things, implement them, and really get buy-in from the team, right? The adoption,
Yes.
I think, is the key there.
Yeah. And that's why I said I took what I had done for many years, one-to-one with people, sharing what they need to know, because it's so much more than words on a page, and now, of course, words on a digital device. Because I could give this to everybody. It's not a chance that you're going to implement them and change them. You have to know how to do this step by step. And so what I do in this program, I act like your virtual tour guide. Now, there are different levels of support if that's something that you want. That's also something that's available. But it's really so much easier to be an editor than to sit down and try and create these things. It was a bear. And frankly, I still feel it's, our mutual friend, Tommy Mello, who's a home service millionaire. I work with him in the garage door. So these are primarily set up for plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, but don't let that scare you off. Every contractor needs to master these first three key manuals where we start out, which is customer service rep to dispatcher to tech and back. There's no company in the home service that doesn't need to know that. So, but in Tommy's case, he will tell you that until we had these in place, it doesn't matter. It was just chaos. And so one of my customers said years ago, he says, I look like a duck calm on the water, but underneath my feet are going crazy on the pond.
Yeah. And if I know Tommy, he probably, took this on and jumped in, feet first, and just implemented. And I know he's got a super successful business. So
he does. He does.
He talks a lot about the value of this.
Yeah. And what he prized most is, again, having the tour guide. Now, not everybody can do what Tommy did, is bring me in. But, the idea is I took this to the power of online and shot the videos where they're bite-sized, chewable little videos so that you can do it. Do we have time for a very, very quick story?
Yeah, for sure. Let's stop screen sharing, Al, so we can.
It's such a process that you need to kind of go through and know the step-by-step to it, because it's just like, oh, I'll just edit. It's not the same, because the goal of this is to get manuals rolled out and stick. And again, it's not shoved out, it's embraced. So there's a story that I always share, which is I had raised Bobby. He was flipping pizzas. And when I brought him in and we taught him the trade, he became our top installer. And I used to manage 5 installers. And I slide open the window and I hand him the instructions and I go, look it over, Bobby, because I'm not going to be there today at 10 o'clock. I said, we'll get there about 2. So I show up at 2 o'clock and I'm walking around the basement going, smoke out of my ears. And I grab him, go out to the truck, and I go, Bobby, this is nothing like what I discussed with you. He goes, oh, your brother Richie showed up and said, do it this way.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, it was another of those painful moments, but fortunately it came at a time, realized, and we went out and we were talking. And this was once it actually caused me and Bobby to speak a little bit about this was Bobby wanted to wake up and have a good day. And now I've ruined it for him. And I wanted to have a good day. And I felt Bobby ruined it. And we both realized that if we need to ruin your day to have a good day, we'll do it. And that's the problem. So we got together, we created the procedures. I could go to a job today and know that it's my company did that job, because for the first time we spec'd out that what was our corporate way of doing things. We had nothing in documentation for any of these things. So Bobby coined the best line ever. So we're rolling out the manuals. Again, remember, it was a New York City union shop. And so there was a little pushback, and Bobby says, these manuals go in, because if you do what's in the book, you're off the hook.
There you go. Do what's
Yeah.
in the book and you're off the hook. That's nice.
Yep.
But, I think implementing manuals, like you say, I think what it does is it gives you a baseline for a business that's never operated with anything similar. It's just sporadic, right? Shooting from the hip. There's no system. In this way, like you said, the notion, the idea of being able to sort of congregate and talk about it, say, okay, well, this is what we think is the best system, but through implementing it, we've noticed, hey, our best tech came up with a better solution than what we have here. Let's implement it, adopt it, roll it out. So it's like you get a good baseline, and then it's just, little micro gains over time, improvement that just betters the entire company.
The manuals I refer to as living documents. They're not always getting rewritten, but they're always getting tweaked.
Right.
Because even my manuals for most plumbing, heating, cooling, electric companies is about 90% to 95% of the way you should leave it. If you go editing more than that, you're usually going on a bad path.
People are going,
that has been true
okay, that's good.
For like 18 to 20 years. That said, there's still some reading and some things to do. But
sure,
more importantly is about the rollout is, when you go, look, Mark, we did our best shot here. We're not done. We need you and we need Victor to take a look at it. Come back to me with what you think is wrong and what is that you hate, and we'll talk about it. Now, you as an owner have to decide to do a little horse trading. And what I mean by that is, you can't say no to all their ideas because pretty soon they know you don't really want their ideas. And we can't say yes to everything. So we have to make some horse trading here about what we are and aren't going to give to. But that usually process really helps build much more of not this company culture, but this company culture. That process is really what's important. And as we go along, because every week we're meeting on it, if we go through any procedure about whatever we do, the question we ask when we get done is, does anybody have a better, cheaper, faster way to do it?
Right.
If the answer is no, this is how we do it today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Better, faster, cheaper, more effective. Awesome. Well, Al, that was a great presentation. I think there's a lot of great insight there for people. We'll put the link up in the show notes again and urge people to go and check it out if they don't have anything like this. Al, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for the chance to share. I appreciate it as always.
All right, Al, take care.